Hello everyone and welcome to the Grow vlog. I'm Jonathan from Grow Gothenburg, and actually now I'm no longer in Gothenburg. I am in Bristol in the UK, and I got the chance to meet with Steph from Bristol Food Producers.
Yep.
So what is Bristol Food Producers?
So Bristol Food Producers is a network of growers, retailers, distributors, producers, farmers, everyone all the way up the food chain, kind of working together to try to get more local food produced in and around the city, and also then get that food to market. So we have about 100 or so members, everything from your kind of primary producers and growers all the way up to people at the top of the food chain, such as retailers, all working together.
Nice. And you're kind of working with three main things, is what you told me.
Yeah.
Like access to land.
Yep, access to skills and access to markets.
Yeah.
And then a wider thing that kind of wraps around all of that, which is just building a stronger network, kind of trying to form those connections between people and kind of advocate, I guess, for the farmers and producers. So yeah, we're trying to get people onto land, especially new entrants. There's a lot of issues with rising land prices and trying to find secure tenure, so we support people to try and do that. We run courses and promote relevant training opportunities to our members as well, and then we're also trying to get people food to market, so whether that's to kind of individual or whether it's to get more local food into restaurants.
Nice. So it's really inspiring what you guys are doing, and we're actually on one of the farms,
Yep.
you can say, that
Yep.
you have
One of our members.
Yeah.
Yep.
So where are we now? Can you tell me?
So we're on a site called Feed Bristol, which is a Bristol City Council owned small holding, which is let to the Avon Wildlife Trust, who do a lot of work around biodiversity conservation. And on this site they sublet to various different enterprises to kind of as a bit of a demonstration of how farming and work around biodiversity can really come together and work together, and ecology is important in that. So actually on this site there's about 4 or 5 different enterprises running. So behind us we have some of the fields from Sims Hill, which is a community supported agriculture project which has been running for I think about 8 years now, and provides about 90 shares I think across the city. And then there's a salad growing project here, somebody growing mushrooms, somebody doing edible herbs and medicinal herbs, and somebody doing a dye, kind of plant dye operation.
So kind of coloring
Yeah.
garments.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's really cool. And like, how did it all start? This particular site. How did it come about?
Well, the site that the Avon Wildlife Trust took on was larger than they kind of really wanted. They are an education organisation, so they run courses and have volunteers coming in to kind of part of the site. They realised there was a lot more land here than they wanted to manage, so they basically looked out for people who wanted to come on and take on some of this land. So people kind of rent plots, like an acre or so, or small areas in some cases, and either kind of pay rent in money or pay rent in time to help with some of the other stuff that's going on the site. But it's great because it builds a much larger community. They're all able to share a lot of the infrastructure that's on the site, the kitchen, the packing shed, a lot of the tools. They share watering in the summer. So it's a really great example of how it can really work for enterprises to kind of be working together to address some of these issues.
That's really nice. I really like the way you told me also that we can basically that this site, this project, is a great way to save down on the kind of the big costs of basically creating the infrastructure of the farm, and then you have a couple of farmers who are renting parts of that land and sharing that infrastructure, so that the risk for each farmer becomes much lower. They just have to pay the rent or do the kind of agreement that you have with the wildlife trust.
Because finding the land is just one of the barriers. I think the overheads and costs to actually set up a farm are huge. If you're talking about fencing, polytunnels, toilets, shed, electricity, water, all of this stuff that needs putting in. And actually, if you can share that across different enterprises, so that's one of the things we're looking at doing is finding another piece of land a bit like this and splitting it up so that people can come and have a go at starting a growing business and really focus on the growing and not have to deal with worrying about the infrastructure or funding the infrastructure. And if they decide it's not for them after a year or two, they've not lost a lot.
Yeah. It actually reminds me a bit about what we have similar projects in Gothenburg, which they call the test beds.
Okay.
Which are basically the same idea that in this case is municipality going in and investing in the infrastructure, and then they have, I think, everything from 500 square meters and up to several thousand or 1,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you can try that for a year.
Yeah.
And see how you do, and try commercially, basically.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
That's the thing. So
yeah,
it's a really cool concept.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see it working so well here. And you walk onto the site and there's a lot of people and everyone knows each other. It's a very welcoming place, and I think that's, talking to a lot of the farmers I know, it's very isolating being on the land on their own all day, and so to have other people around, to have other people to ask questions of or show things with or ask for help from, suddenly you need a lot of things harvesting, someone else is there to help you lend a hand.
Yeah, so this leads us into the second thing that you're working on. So the first thing was access to land.
Yep.
And the second point, let's call it the second point, it was the kind of access to skills, or like sharing, basically networking and sharing knowledge between farmers.
And I think,
how do you work with that here in Bristol?
I mean, it's a big one to tackle, because I think as well as, in the UK there's not a lot of kind of courses, in-depth courses that you can go on. Like, it's how do you get from being somebody who wants to be a farmer to having the knowledge that you need. So there's a lot of people who do internships and that kind of stuff, but that's not available for everybody. So it's a real challenge. We try to offer some master classes, so a lot of peer-to-peer learning. So we'll employ some of our members who have like skills in certain areas to teach other people who may not have those skills. But also a lot of things like farm tours, taking people round to each other's farms. I think it's something that, seeing how other people do things, having an opportunity to ask another farmer like questions about what they're doing and why, and seeing what different people are doing. I think that informal learning is one of the best things that we can do, really, and to make those connections.
It's funny because I really share this experience with the stuff that we've been doing with the urban farming safaris in Gothenburg. It's really, it creates so much value for people to actually come out on site, see how the farmers are doing it in practice, and be able to chat with them about their challenges and starting up and learning from their mistakes and not making those mistakes themselves. So it's really interesting.
I think it's also a great way for people to meet each other as well. I think, obviously on a site like this there's a lot of people who know each other, but in the wider area I keep meeting more and more people who are starting out or who don't really know anybody else, or who are so busy they never really get the chance. Maybe they're a bit out of the city to kind of come and meet other people. So it's an opportunity to get everybody together into one place, and really start to see those connections happening and seeing the great things that kind of come as a result of that, and what people can potentially do and collaborate on.
And how they can create more value together, maybe, and sell, because that's the third part that you're working on, is the selling thing, like how you provide access for farmers to the market. So you call it access to market, basically.
Yeah, totally.
And what do you work with? What do you do to make that possible?
So we've the first thing we did was we produced a fairly comprehensive document looking at all the different possible routes to market. So everything from advice about selling directly through to which restaurants will buy local produce in the city, and different retailers, what kind of margin they might take, some of the online options, that kind of thing. But what we're working on at the moment is, one of the things we kept hearing from restaurants is that they couldn't get local vegetables. And so we started digging deeper into this and really realised that the way that a restaurant wants to buy veg and the way a farmer wants to sell veg just doesn't meet, and it needs something in the middle to kind of bridge that gap. So we went to visit a project in Manchester that's really aiming to address that, and we're now doing a bit of a feasibility study into basically forming a cooperative of growers and of businesses that would act as that in between, that would handle consolidating the orders, would handle all the distribution, and really bridge that gap whilst still really caring about the provenance, really focusing on the local, really enabling the chefs to know where that food comes from, and get chefs out onto the farm, get them to really meet the farmers and understand what the challenges and restrictions are.
Yeah. So basically bridging the gap between the consumers or the restaurants and the farmers, because apparently they're not talking the same language at the moment.
No.
It seems so. It's really funny. Yeah,
there are some examples. Like one of the growers here sells a lot to restaurants, but it's I think it takes a lot of creative thought from the restaurants to really be open to the way a farmer wants to sell. They're used to calling up at midnight and the wholesaler will drop the veg off the next day, and there's just no way that a farmer can deliver that kind of service, or should have to. So I think the answer is that it takes give and take on both sides. The restaurants need to be open to change, but also the farmers also need to realise that they have to kind of communicate what they've got kind of clearly, and hopefully by consolidating that into an organisation, we can de-risk it a lot for all the parties involved.
It's really interesting. I'm so excited to follow the process, and we'll just take a quick tour around.
Yeah,
should we do that?
Yeah.
So now we're heading into the polytunnels of the farm called Semsil, and that's the 90 household CSA. Cool. So it's 3 polytunnels here. 1, 2, 3. And now we're walking in. They're all one.
Yeah,
it's
so
one
it's like
big
a
polytunnel.
Polytunnel, so it's all open inside.
Nice. So how did this farm start? This particular one?
So it was a group of individuals who came together and really wanted to start a farm with a real community focus and purpose. So they approached the council. Someone in the council helped them find some land, and since then it's been a lot of hard work. And I think they kind of raised some money from within the community to pay for the first kind of polytunnels, and they got some funding from an organisation to pay for this particular polytunnel and replace the terrifying greenhouse that was here before. But yeah, they also have worker share members, so people who work for their veg share, and they have a community project on a Thursday where lots of different people get referred to the project and kind of come along and work and share a meal together and cook and then take some veg away. So yeah.
So it's a kind of it's a very cooperative CSA. You can say the
Yeah,
members
really,
help out
really
a lot
active CSA,
to
yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, onwards.
So onwards, next farm.
Simshill.
Simshill.
So it's named because if you look at really old agricultural maps, the other field that they have across the motorway is labelled as Simshill.